All right, welcome, Perry. Episode 6. We are on a roll here in the latter part of the summer. It's the week of August 20th, and we got some great stuff to talk about today. How's your summer ending up? You're pretty busy, aren't you?
I'm very busy, man. We had that amazing month last month, and I think it's just continuing on to the end of this month, too.
Well, and that is so true of the Austin real estate market. We're going to talk about it a little bit today at the news, and I think we'll, based on what I'm seeing, have lots to talk about next week, because by the time we get to next week, episode number 7, we'll have the July numbers out. And those numbers are going to be, if I expect anything other than blockbuster, I think you agree with me that we're going to see some really strong numbers for Austin for July.
Do you think that they're going to be as high as they were the previous month? Do you want to make a little side bet here, or do you want to go where?
No, here's what I think we're going to see is we're going to see 20-25% up year over year as far as sales, and it's going to be a big, strong number. Just because if you look at a market that's running with 3 to 5 months of inventory to kind of overall look at the market, even as we're going to talk about today, the luxury market's starting to pick up, and when that happens, I think you're going to see the overall numbers get pretty strong. So let me open up the
You heard it here first.
Yeah, you heard it. 20% is my number. We'll see. You know, you might have to owe me a Mexican martini or something if I'm.
I'll buy you a Mexican martini. You're worth it on that. I promise you.
All right. Yeah, because it's going to benefit everybody, including everybody listening to this. So let's talk a little about the news. I don't know if you saw that article from that Economist who talks about your favorite market, downtown Austin, and how strong things are. It's interesting.
Amazing.
He's hitting on some of the drivers we've talked about, which is if you look at the market overall in Austin, his economic look at it is the market has recouped every job it lost since the recession and then some. In other words, we're back above water. And there are not many parts of the country that can say that. So
it's amazing. I mean, I hear people relocating. I've done relocations all over downtown, and I ran into the occupancy rates. I'm surprised he didn't say they were higher, because I can personally attest that some of them are in the 99% range.
Oh, I think that overall, the way to look at it is, you know, his 97% number is probably a little too low. I mean, certainly from what I've seen and what you've discussed on this podcast previously, you're talking about really high occupancy rate. And we're going to get into that in one of our questions today. And somebody who wants to live downtown, rent until they can buy something, and once they learn the market. And it's a challenge for people. And if you look at the growth, I mean, it's really driven by what you've talked about previously in your downtown updates. That 24-hour live, work, play lifestyle, and all the amenities that are now available downtown and why people want to live there.
I've been on the phone with my wife recently talking about the latest ice cream flavor from Ben & Jerry's. I walked right outside my condo door over to 7-Eleven and made sure I had it by the time I hung up the phone with her.
That's your temptation, right?
You know, it is what it is.
Absolutely. And I mentioned this before. We're going to shift gears here to the luxury home market. There was a great article this week talking about the luxury home market in the Business Journal. What's interesting is, although they love to show the most expensive homes in Austin, including that $15 million property that's out by Lake Travis, right. When you look at these, we're now getting solid, I'll call it fairly diverse upper-end buyers. I mean, you have the executives and the CEOs. You've got celebrities, including actors and actresses. You're starting to get musicians and entrepreneurs coming in, and so it's starting to broaden out. And what's interesting is I actually ran into a guy that works in the trade where they build custom homes. In other words, he's not the builder, but he runs the crews. And I saw him probably a year ago, and he was talking about how slow things were and how he was kind of paring down his work crews. Well, I ran into him this week. He said, I got to tell you, the light switch went on about 90 days ago, and all of my builders are starting projects. He said, I've just tripled my workforce, and he's all luxury homes. Well, it is interesting to see that despite what the article talks about as far as, you know, sort of the celebrity musician and Hollywood set, it's across the board. I mean, you've got to remember all those markets spill up from a move-up standpoint. In other words, you sell your house in Westlake and you sell it for $800,000 or $900,000 and you want to move up into a bigger home, you're now providing demand because those houses are selling in Westlake. Now, what's interesting is when I look at the numbers, the total market overview, which will come out in September, I think will show this, is it's probably getting a little bit better above 800,000, but still not great, because we've got these spotty outside areas. When you get outside of the core areas, things like Westlake and along the Bee Caves corridor or along the Central corridor, you start to see the demand shift much lower. You get out by Lake Travis, there's some areas like Costa Bella, which do well, some areas specifically in the Lakeway region. But if you get much on the north side of the lake, where you've got some of those areas that they put some massive homes in, it's a little tough to move houses over on that side of the lake. So you got to be careful.
Vista.
Yeah, Lago Vista would be another one that would be tough. You got to be careful if you're a home seller and or a home buyer and you're thinking this and you're hearing good news and you're thinking about putting your house back on the market. If you're above 800,000 or certainly above $1.5 million, $2 million, if you're not in a core area, you probably want to err on the side of caution and think about how strong the market is and get somebody out to talk with you about how many houses have really sold in your price range. But the good news is it's starting to pick up.
Right. I'm seeing a lot of demand for high-end contemporary homes in that price range too, which don't really typically have a big. There weren't a lot of builders that put in that type of product either.
Yeah, so, it's interesting. We need to import a couple of builders from South Beach in Miami or some of these other places that build these modern homes.
Exactly.
You see them everywhere there. I mean,
right.
As you know, I was in Miami for a couple of years and sold a lot of that property. But it's very rare here. And when you have these buyers that come in that want those modern homes, they usually have about 3 houses to choose from.
Yeah.
In a broad price range. Another article about downtown, you got it up on the screen now, the New York Times, of all places. This
right.
tells you when it's getting to be the big time. The New York Times dove in and wrote a whole article about the downtown Austin construction boom. We're talking about how the depth of construction and how much demand. And I picked a couple of titles out of here. They describe the demand as exploding for downtown Austin, which I think you've echoed that in your reports.
Right.
And in this article, they talk about some of the key projects. I'm not going to get back into that again, but it's absolutely on fire downtown in terms of projects that are under construction. And I love this quote: "Demand is outpacing supply for nearly every asset class downtown." And they weren't even just talking about residential. They're talking about office. They're talking about rentals. They're talking about, retail space. I mean, it's a crazy strong market in terms of activity.
Right. Even the CrossFit guys can't find the perfect place downtown.
Yeah, exactly. The CrossFit guys had to get a second choice for what they're in as far as their interim space. You're absolutely correct. And there's enough projects coming on that I think that there was a quote in the article about sort of the next 10 years because of limitations with office delivery. I mean, the last big office tower was the Frost Bank building. And that's over a decade ago. I remember when I was in Austin and that thing went up. It was amazing to see the difference in the skyline with that gigantic tower. Now you've got the residential towers all over the place. But there hasn't been a lot of, because of the real estate recession, office supply. And then you have people like Facebook and others coming in and taking down space. If that migration happens and all the state agencies start to migrate east, like we talked about in some of these new parks and projects, they'll allow things to scale for the next 10 years. But short of that, the guy from Cousins Properties was talking about you may see some office towers go up south of the river, on the Riverside corridor. And that could very well happen. I think it would be a good addition to kind of diversifying where the office space is downtown.
There's a lot of talk right now putting it right where the old power plant is. Right. In fact, there are 2 buildings that are scheduled for that. It's interesting that these New York Times is talking about construction booms. The only real project right now that's in construction, other than the 2 hotels, is that the Gables project over there on Cesar Chavez and Lamar. But I believe the plans for these 4 buildings here for that lot right in front of 360 and beside the CSC building includes 2 office towers and 2 residential apartment communities right there. And I think that's going to be the next 2 projects that are going downtown.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, because I think that if you look at what tends to happen in these corridors, and they certainly have seen this, if you know anything about Chicago and New York and LA and these other places where these downtown cores became a live workplace, is Office space tends to get behind the curve because office space is so slow to be put up. The builders are so cautious because of the problems they've had, and it's extremely expensive to build out. It's the most expensive asset class to actually tenant improve. So they're usually very cautious and very late. And the other thing you have is you've got slow turnover. I mean, somebody could be renting an apartment in Amley and then decide they want to rent one over in one of the new projects, and they can just move. If I have 50,000 feet and I'm a law firm, it could take me 5 years to decide to move and actually pull it off. So the turnover is different. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the next decade. Now, the last article we have is National Association of Realtors existing home sales will be out this week, actually. This is an estimate by an economist by the name of Lasner. I kind of look at his stuff. He's fairly accurate. What's interesting is he's expecting it to be up nationally from June at the July number. And it's not going to be up 22%, or 20% like we're talking about for Austin, but 4.47 million units on an annualized basis. And the most important thing I see him seeing, and this is huge for relocation inbound into Austin, the share of distressed sales are declining in almost every key market. And inventory is down 22% nationwide from a year ago. This will be the gasoline that really supercharges the Austin relocation market. We have so many people coming in who can't sell their properties in their previous market. When that opens up, I expect that you'll see even stronger demand for relocating clients. And the shift will shift a little bit away from rentals into the purchase market.
I call that the one-bedroom furnished apartment downtown.
Yes, exactly. And you'll see that across the market. I mean, when a 3 or 4 bedroom nice house in Northwest Austin goes up for rent, it usually has 15 applicants the first morning it goes on the market. And that's because of that distressed share. So if you think about all this pressure coming into Austin, we got the overall economy. We're at about, I don't know if it's 80-something days, 83 days until the election or something like that. Unless the economy goes sideways or down based on what happens with the presidential election, next spring it's shaping up to be an extremely interesting market, especially if the national market continues to get better and better.
Well, let's wish them luck. I think it's going to happen. I mean, it's just too many people entering into the workforce now with the graduating people. I think that you have the baby boomers who are shifting careers and doing a number of other things, relocating to a better quality of life. It's just amazing what's happening out there, and we're growing as a country. We're growing as a country. It's bound to catch up. We just needed to stabilize, and I think we're there.
Absolutely. It's absolutely.